Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to jump right in because we want to make the most of our time that we have with our panelists here. Rima, I want to start with you. Set the scene for us here today for everyone listening. Saudi has made gaming a strategic priority under Vision 2030. We've seen a lot of progress. What's actually changed over the past few years that has put us in this position in the kingdom as one of the world's most exciting markets for gaming and digital entertainment?
Thank you so much, first for having me and for having me with great company as well. I think gaming such an interesting topic right now, and the landscape has changed so much over the last 5 years. So we've always had such a gaming focused population. So around 60 to 70% of Saudis actually consider themselves as gamers or gaming enthusiasts. So we have the interest, we have the talent, we just didn't have the infrastructure around it or the ecosystem, and that's what's really changed over the past 5 years. So from an investor's perspective, you see that it's changed from being single efforts into a fully concentrated value chain. So we have academic and educational systems now that are teaching gaming, that are incorporating it into the tracks. So King Faisal University has a gaming track, King Saud University, Princess Noura here in Saudi. We also have gaming incubators and gaming accelerators. We have investment arms that are investing in gaming. We have partners. So the whole ecosystem is making it easier for founders who previously didn't have any access or resources to actually feel empowered to start the game, to leave their 9 to 5 job and follow, their passion. So it's been really
Have
exciting
you
to be
seen that
part of that.
happen?
Yes, actually, it's been. I mean, I think one of our founders. Is Merak from Sarvania, and she always tells us about how her family first reacted to her saying she wanted to start a studio, a gaming studio. It's not a traditional or a path, really, but now
In
because
any culture
in
or
any
part of the
culture.
world, yeah.
Yeah, but what has been really helpful is because of the backing at a national level, they feel empowered to do so, and then they see the results. So she's been doing amazingly well. Her game is now backed by Nintendo, and there's so many. We can see the fruits of the gaming ecosystem really growing. And the National Development Fund's esports and gaming strategy really helped set the stage. So they've helped have institutional capital be part of the industry so that us as investors, founders, and partners feel that it's a lasting trend, lasting industry versus just a niche trend.
Yeah, I want to stay with you before I move to
Yeah.
Majed, just on explaining that shift again a little bit more. The example you gave, it is unique for anywhere in the world, for someone to just say, I'm leaving my 9 to 5 and I'm
Yes.
gonna be a gamer. I mean, we used to get told off for taking too much time on games and focus on our studies. What do you think has made that possible beyond the money coming in? Or it's all very well, to put a strategy in place, but what's actually shifted in the population to make that happen?
Definitely. I think that's a great question. I think people are seeing gaming not just as entertainment, but actually as a viable industry throughout. So, gaming, and I'm sure everyone in the gaming ecosystem has heard this stat of gaming generates more than film and music combined
Yeah.
globally. And you can see that so much access to that or so much potential there that's left here that can be captured, whether it's through IPs, whether through its game tech, whether through its partnerships, all these different things and capabilities that can really help grow a company.
Yeah.
And the other part that we always talk about as well at Merak is that we're not investing in one game or one project. We're investing in sustainable companies that will build talent, that will build different IPs across the years, and hopefully be sustainable for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and it really helps that also your market in Saudi is so young.
Yeah.
And digitally native to become your customers in the long term as well.
Exactly.
Which segues perfectly to you, Majed, in terms of the money. So it's all very well to say we're building all of this infrastructure, have a strategy in place, there's obviously interest and opportunity, but all of that means nothing for an economy if you can't monetize it. So, talk to me a little bit about sort of media rights and engagement models and commercial partnerships. How is this sort of shaping the investment strategies in the kingdom?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think when we discuss IPs, specifically in the context of events, whether that's in sports or entertainment, I think we're starting to see a big shift, or the biggest shift we're starting to see is that the value of the IP itself is no longer determined by the event. It's determined by how well the ecosystem around the event is commercialized, right?
Right.
So historically, people, the focus has always been on the event itself. Today, an investor, he'll come in, he'll look at a bundle of rights, and he'll look at everything around the event. So production quality, fan engagement, content creation, sponsorship activation, the commercialization of media rights, buying and selling the rights, the distribution. But more importantly, he or she will look at how well all those elements work together to create value, right? And another area that I'd like to think we're beginning to prioritize is really the fan journey. And I think that's important, right?
Right.
And when I say the fan journey, I mean the fan journey in its entirety. So from the moment the fan hears about the event, to the moment the fan buys a ticket, to the moment, he or she attends the event, till they consume the content, all the way up until they go home to tell their family and friends about the event and their experience, right? That journey is compelling, the fan journey. And when I look at Saudi today and I look at the market today, I see opportunity across that entire value chain, right? And the reason it excites me so much, because like you just alluded to earlier, there's so many elements and parts of our ecosystem that have yet to be developed,
Yeah.
yet to be even built in some cases. And that's not a criticism, that's an
No, it's
opportunity.
opportunity.
It's actually the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because when a marketplace is being built, the private sector has the opportunity to come in, assess, see where the gaps are, see how they fill in those gaps, see how they provide solutions, solve problems, create value, create demand. I'll give you an example. Today in Saudi Arabia, when we speak about sponsorships, you mentioned sponsorships. When we speak about sponsorships in the workplace in Saudi, the conversation, whether you're on the receiving end of a presentation or you're delivering it, right? The conversation will always tend to circle back to the same recurring theme, which is ROI.
Yeah.
What is your ROI? How do you calculate your ROI? These are all the correct questions to ask, the right conversations to ask, but we tend to jump too quickly into measuring value before we've even created value, right? So ultimately, you can only monetize what you've created. And if your audience isn't engaged, your content isn't, engaging enough, it's not compelling enough, if your ecosystem around that asset isn't strong enough, then your challenge isn't measuring ROI, your challenge is creating the demand that will ultimately drive the ROI, right? And that's what makes Saudi so exciting, is because we're not just optimizing on existing demand, we're still creating it. So this is why the journey is interesting here, because for me, in my opinion, the companies and institutions that choose to help create that demand today will ultimately be the companies and institutions that end up creating the most value over the next 10 years.
I want to build on two things you said. One is, yes, you're right. It's not about an event, it's the fan journey.
Yes.
Because I was listening to the Minister of Tourism just a few days ago, and he was talking about we're not trying to bring people to the one event, which is the World Cup or the Expo. The hope is, and the belief is, that if you come to see the World Cup, you are also going to go maybe to Alula.
Absolutely.
Or you're going to go visit the other cities, even if you come for Hajj. Odds are now that time you spend in the kingdom gets extended because you're going to go visit other, you might end up
Absolutely.
taking your family to Six Flags or to Qiddiya and so on.
Absolutely.
So, how are investors or potential sponsors being marketed to, or now measuring this ROI that you talk about? Because surely the ROI is worth more now with that fan journey.
Yes.
Or is that an education process?
No, I think that's a good question. It's an excellent question. I think there's two parts to it. There's the part of us initially trying to, again, like I said earlier, trying to optimize or not optimize, create the demand necessary to optimize on it, right? That's when we can start beginning to calculate ROI with credibility, right? When you talk about calculating ROI for the purpose of sponsorships is an important mechanic and metrics that in itself we still have yet to develop fully, right? So right now we're relying on certain consultants who have the data analytics ready to really take an asset within a specific infrastructure and use those data analytics to come up with proper calculations of ROI. Not every element of our ecosystem right now is capable of doing that in the right way, but we're getting there. And we're moving there and we're focusing on the good thing is we have a leadership that are aware of where the gaps are.
Yeah.
So they know where the resources should be allocated. And I think right now we're on the right track to really figuring out how we optimize that demand first and then optimize on the demand that we've created.
Yeah, that in itself an opportunity, right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Measuring the ROI correctly.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the opportunity, Rima, so you invest in gaming companies and you support founders through your accelerator. What are you seeing in terms of the change, in terms of the quality of startups and founders and the gaming system? You gave us a brilliant example of, someone leaving their 9 to 5 and becoming, going into the sector full time. But in terms of the models and the kinds of founders you see, what maturity are we at?
Definitely. And just to clarify, they left a 9 to 5 to a 24-hour. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
well-
easy being a gaming founder. We have some of our amazing founders in the audience actually, and
It's
I
24
don't-
and 365.
exactly. I think that's just the being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur really. So it's really just jumping into that and taking that challenge. And just to give a bit of context about Merak, so we have a 300 million rial gaming fund backed by the National Development Fund, where we invest in gaming studios, whether they're Saudi founders or international companies that are looking to have a presence in Saudi. And we also have an accelerator program where it's a 16-week program where we focus on turning games into companies and on the much earlier side. So across the last year and a half where we've launched the fund, we've invested in almost 40 gaming companies. And we've seen
40.
40.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of different types of companies, a lot of different types of founders. I think what keeps on the trend that I'm seeing is honestly the growth in the quality of the companies themselves, of the founders. They're coming in asking the right questions about commercialization, about how to access publishers, about fundraising, about how to make the company sustainable. And I think that's really critical for us. We're also seeing an increase in Saudi founders. So in the last accelerator cohort, we had an increase of almost 70% in Saudi founders. So it's really, I think, a great signal to show that Saudi is both attracting global companies, but also producing gaming companies at
But
the
if
same
they're
time.
building games that they're localizing for themselves and the region, that makes the most sense, right?
Yeah, but actually we don't focus on localizing as much as shipping globally. So
Really?
we really try to have companies that are competitively minded in that sense. Producing for locally is definitely a priority, but also making sure that that local content is still accepted by international appetite.
So give us an example of maybe something founders came to you with that has potential to ship globally. And tell me if that's because, for example, we saw the South Korean wave of games become very popular globally. So is that sort of their vision of, well, we want Saudi games to become a global
Yeah.
phenomenon in the same way, Japanese, South Korean, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very biased. Obviously, I love all my portfolio companies, and I think they all have great games that can be shippable. But a lot of different, I think, governments and economies in general are seeing the value in gaming,
Right.
whether it's one game, whether it's the whole infrastructure like esports in general. So there has been a shift into that focus. A lot of the games that I'm seeing that have the potential to go away, to go out, are using very small parts of our culture in like normal ways. So like it'll be like a game that has al-ula in the background,
Right.
for instance, or they'll be using a qahwa finjan, like a
Right.
coffee, Arab Saudi coffee, and all that. So it really just depends on that. It's very honestly like strategic in how they do it, but we've seen a lot of great examples.
Yeah, I mean, Alula is like the perfect backdrop for any film
Truly.
or game. It has so many diverse landscapes, so that's a dream right here locally for us, right?
Yeah.
So we have seen progress, Majed, in attracting a lot of global events. We've even seen the Esports World Cup happen
Yes.
here. We are seeing properties develop. What do you think or see as the next chapter of growth, and where should the kingdom focus its efforts to now build on this value creation?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the Esports World Cup is an exception. I
Yeah.
think it's in the sense that it's really created a bit of a, a hub and an epicenter for gaming here in Saudi. I wouldn't really categorize it under the label of attracting world-class events. We've
Right.
kind of created the whole hub here, right? So when we talk about the next chapter, I think it's important to acknowledge the chapter that we've just completed here in Saudi Arabia, right? Because that chapter was really about attracting world-class events, bringing in entertainment properties, putting Saudi Arabia on the map, creating the necessary attention that will help accelerate the growth of the sector. And I have to say, I mean, thanks to our leadership, we have been incredibly, incredibly successful in doing that. This next chapter is really about, creating our own. It's about really, establishing a system that enables us to continue creating even more value out of the IPs that we've already brought to market.
Right.
So I'll give you a simple example of this. So when we think of building a stadium for a major event, just like we're doing here in Saudi Arabia for the World Cup 2034, that conversation never ends when construction is complete, nor does it end when the tournament is over. The very real question will always surface, okay, what happens next?
Yeah, it
How do you fill up the
starts almost at that time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. How do you fill up the stadium? How do you activate it? How do you curate experiences around it? How do you generate revenue out of the assets within the stadium throughout the calendar year? These are all important questions to us. They create value. And I think the same principle should apply to all the IPs, the events, and all these entertainment properties that we're bringing into our market, right? We need to start asking, how do we maximize value out of these events?
Yeah.
After the announcement, before the announcement, after the event,
In the
between
lead up to
editions,
the event
in the lead
now.
up, throughout this whole process. And I think this is important. We need to ask these questions also knowing that this isn't the final chapter. You ask what the next chapter is, there are chapters after that, right? So after you attract the world-class events, you establish a system that allows you to extract maximum value out of these events. The next chapter after that, to me, is ownership, acquisition, and the creation of our own local IPs. So this is where you start to think, okay, which IPs should I own? Which IPs should I acquire? Which IPs should I create? Which IPs should I build? Which IPs should I start really thinking about how I can integrate into my community for long-lasting value? These are the questions we should be asking because, success, it's not going to come from owning more IPs.
Yeah, we own
It's gonna-
a fair bit now.
Yeah, it's not that. It's not going to come from owning more IPs. It's coming from owning the right IPs. So
Right.
you have to ask, which IPs make the most sense for my market? Which IPs are commercially viable? Which IPs come with a strong foundation for grassroots initiative? Which IPs incentivize mass participation, help develop talent? Which IPs have the potential to be exported internationally
Yeah.
beyond Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
That to me, that's where the kingdom should focus its efforts because, again, I'll say it again, I mean, success 20 years from now, it's not going to be measured by how many events we hosted. It's going
Yeah.
to be measured by how much value we created from the assets we hosted, the assets we acquired, and the assets we created ourselves.
Yeah, all the money that went into building those assets now needs to create a legacy almost.
Of course, and sustainability over the long
Yeah,
term.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess you're thinking similarly now as well, Rema. Like when you're talking about what can be shipped abroad from your founders. So to it's still early days relatively, but what qualities are you looking for in founders who have that capability perhaps, or you're betting on for that capability to be able to create those kind of legacy opportunities?
Definitely. So when we look at founders, it's not different than any other industry really. We generally look at, because it's a very early stage of the company, right? We do early stage investments, so C to Series A, B. We look for founders that have the ability to adapt, to change. We see a lot of gaming companies start off with a specific genre or game or business model and then shift
Yeah, you got to
1, 2 years
pivot
later.
quickly if it's not working, right?
Exactly. So having that ability is really important. Technical expertise obviously is very important. Knowing game design, user experience, all these things. But then also commercial adeptness and commercial intelligence is really important. So understanding monetization, commercialization, publishing, all these things. How to hire exceptional talent, how to retain them, how to have strategic partnerships. Because like investing in a or creating a successful game is great, but creating multiple successful games and a long or a profitable company is investable for us. So that's the kind of founders that we look for. Um, I think lastly, it's coachability, honestly.
Yeah.
So we look for founders that are willing to or seek feedback, actually. They want to know how to grow, how to
Yeah.
change, what to fix, and that adapt with every milestone.
Yeah, get your product market fit through
Exactly.
feedback, right?
Exactly.
This is still though relatively nascent and not as well known as other gaming markets, other creators. What are some misconceptions that you encounter? You know, when you travel globally and you talk about your startups, but also just in terms of when it's about talking about writing that check. What are maybe some misconceptions that people have or you encounter about our founders in the kingdom?
Yeah, so I think gaming in general is generally is grouped all together, gaming companies. So there's a lot of difference between a gaming studio versus a gaming publisher versus a game tech company versus gaming enablers or partners and things like that. So knowing the distinction is really valuable. And then also with founders themselves, with our gaming founders are really one of the most sophisticated entrepreneurs that you'll meet.
Yeah,
Because
because they play themselves.
of course, they have that knowledge of
Yeah.
like what a consumer wants. And but also to run a successful gaming company, you have to know software engineering or coding. You have to know how to utilize the latest AI technology. You have to know analytics, marketing, community building, partnerships, all these things under one company to really be successful. So that's usually what venture investors look for, really, is someone who has that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, but also the capability to follow through on different bets.
Yeah.
And then another thing is, I've said this earlier, but it's that we don't really invest in a game, we invest in a company itself.
Right.
So I think when investors realize that, when they see that it's a return over multiple years versus betting on a one-hit wonder,
Yeah.
makes them feel more comfortable about this industry.
Yeah. What annoys you though in terms of misconceptions? What are some, maybe if you have an anecdote of a misconception you came across in a conversation?
I think one thing actually is that women are very much represented in gaming, and they're not a lot of people talk about it as much or see it as much. We have a lot of amazing women founders, gaming founders, but then also the gaming community for women has been fantastic. There's a She Jams, which is a like a grassroots female community for gaming
Okay.
that started from 2012, and they have been growing their
2012.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
They've been growing their community year by year, where they just have women come together, play games, help each other learn how to game or how to build games, all these things. And now they have to actually make their events ticketed because they have to limit the amount of people that come. But before it was,
Incredible.
and it's really all led by fantastic young women and men that support them too. I think that's what's really exciting about the industry is that it's not limited to who's doing it or from which industry they come from.
Yeah.
We have people that are coming from the finance industry, from the creative industry directly, from engineering, from everything,
Yeah.
and building fantastic
Oh,
games.
that's a great example, and definitely a misconception people would have had even now, never mind back in 2012,
Yeah.
about women gamers. That's a really good one to look at for sponsorship
Yes,
ROI,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Strong
Um,
storytellers there.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a long fan journey
No,
potential
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
I guess a question for both of you. For investors who have not traditionally invested, not just in the region, but in the sectors that we're
Yes.
talking about, why is now the right time? I mean, people could argue every time they say it, now is the right time to invest, but
Yeah.
it really is the right time to get in on this. It's almost a little bit too late if you miss out in these next formative years almost. How would you explain to investors why now is the time to look at Saudi for putting money into these
Yeah.
sectors, starting to build those partnerships? And I'll start with you,
Okay,
Majed.
sure. Well, I mean, that's interesting because I think, I mean, if I were advising people who are exploring opportunities in Saudi Arabia, I would ask them to look at Saudi market, specifically maybe the sport and entertainment
Yeah.
sector, as well as gaming, maybe especially gaming. I would ask them to look at it a bit like growth stocks. So, growth stocks.
So small caps.
Yeah, yes, and like growth stocks in a very early stage
Yeah.
of a very strong upward trajectory. The unique thing about the opportunity here is, we have what many people are calling this late mover advantage, right? Where, like I was alluding to earlier, is, we have so many elements and parts of the ecosystem still being developed, still being built. So it gives us this advantage of having a blank canvas
Yeah,
in front of us,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
And this ability to have a blank canvas and the ability to look outward at what other people have done,
Yeah.
what other markets have done, what other countries have done,
Yeah.
and see what they've done well, see what they may have not done so well, and absorb all of that and really build smartly around that. So I think that's really compelling, and I think also it's important to acknowledge that the, the the focus on investment here in Saudi has shifted,
Yeah.
has really evolved, let's say, over the years. Previously we'd be looking outward for strategic partnerships to invest in international assets, and we still do that, but I think the focus has shifted a lot today where we're looking inward now.
Yeah.
We're looking at our own assets. How can we elevate those assets? How can we create enough value in those assets to attract not just local investment, but international investment? And I think that's also very compelling. So, I mean, my advice or what I would tell is pretty simple. I would tell them not to come to Saudi Arabia to enter a market. I would say come to Saudi Arabia to help build
Yeah.
the market,
Yeah. And in the lead up, I mean, many would say now is the right time just because lead up to, I mean, the World Cup. We are already in World Cup season and we can see, traffic patterns change, people's meal times change, your whole day, your routine changes by this one event. And this one's going to happen, the next one's going to happen here. Is that the only reason? And how big is that reason?
No, I think that's definitely, it is a massive event that I think, to your point earlier, which you very correctly touched on, is that when you have these type of major events, they really touch on so many different industries. You have so many demographics that are impacted indirectly. People are coming into your country and really spending money in different sectors. So absolutely, it touches different sectors. With the World Cup specifically is a unique case. Aside from it being a global phenomenon of an event, the preparation journey for it is divided into so many different phases. I mean, you have so many ministries
Yeah.
working together. You have the phase of infrastructure set up, and then it goes into, the actual tournament. So there's no doubt going to be an opportunity there for people to enter from various sectors. So it's exciting, and it's exciting to see the journey. and
Is
we're-
there any gaps? Do you want to give people any tips of
Look,
what to look
I
at?
can't speak for the World Cup officially and what they're
Yeah.
doing, but I certainly just from a macro scale, looking at what's happening,
Yeah.
I would say, depending on what industry you're in, if you're on the sports industry, people are looking for that traction, for that demand, for people to come in to fill in the seats,
Yeah.
to create the type of traction that really creates a compelling case for a tournament. So um, there will be opportunity across the board,
Yeah.
whether that's in infrastructure, whether that's in, you know, everywhere along the marketing value chain,
Yeah.
whether that's the low-hanging fruits of, you know, partnerships or, you know, marketing or digital marketing, or facility management, certainly in the construction and infrastructure
I mean,
side,
every
along
facet of the
every facet of
economy
that,
gets
every
touched
facet of
by
that.
this, right?
Absolutely.
I was chatting with, I mean, very randomly at a conference with a young Saudi gentleman who said, yes, I've bought property right across from one of the stadiums. I've bought a studio. He's quite young, just started working, bought it on his own. And he said it's because of the World Cup.
Yes.
I will rent it out as a B&B, before and during the
Yes.
event. And, you might argue it's quite early, but it's actually the best time. So every facet of the economy will be impacted.
Definitely.
Why, from a gaming perspective, is now the right time, Rima?
Yeah, so I think I echo everything that Majed said, honestly, about just Saudi in general having the right resources in place, the right different players working together
Yeah.
to make it an attractive ecosystem or industry at the moment in general. But for gaming, specifically for indie games, the games that the types of companies that we invest in, I think it's the right time because we do have such great young talent in Saudi. We also have the resources and the infrastructure that's attracting global talent here, and that knowledge sharing is creating better on-ground companies as well that are more sustainable. And because they're such early companies, there's still an opportunity to capture value
Yeah.
in the future. So going in now, helping them form their IPs, helping them scale, makes sure that you actually get a bigger piece of the pie down the line.
Yeah, and I guess it's quite agile here in terms of even the regulatory or IP
Definitely.
aspects, right? Because those that sort of paperwork is still evolving.
Definitely. I think a big part of what's helping with the ecosystem right now, the gaming ecosystem, is that it's a national objective for gaming. So gaming is part of Vision 2030's goals, and to have people working in gaming, to have a specific number of gaming companies, all these different things. So when all the ecosystem players are working towards one goal, it makes it much easier to
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah. What excites you most, though, about this? Because again, we've yet to see, it's so early stage. You said you've invested in some 40 companies,
Yeah.
but it's going to take some time to see that growth story pan out. But what's most exciting to you when you speak to founders in this space about, well, no, we've got to do this now? I mean, to the point where, again, leaving the 9 to 5 to 24/7, 365, why are people more excited now
Yeah.
than perhaps they had I mean, they've had all this time?
Yeah, I think something that's been very exciting for me is talking to founders who have wanted to start a gaming company 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and didn't feel empowered to do
Right.
so. But now, because they see that there's the different parts of the value chain ready to
Yeah.
support them, they're able to do
Yeah.
it. I think also a gaming company is really it's like you were saying, storytelling. It's
Yeah.
digital, it requires digital skill. It requires a business mindset. It's all these different things that make it a lucrative business at the end
Yeah.
of the day. It doesn't have to be just B2C, it could be B2B, all these different things. So they're seeing the different opportunities that are available and taking advantage of it, which
Yeah,
is great.
yeah. I guess that support system, and also we've seen technology change so much,
Definitely.
even in the last 24 months in terms of it's cheaper to build, you have
Yeah.
all of these AI tools to help you build now.
Yeah.
Claude Code is apparently
Yeah.
doing things that, even a whole team of coders couldn't do before.
Yeah, no, I think just in general, we're seeing a lot of international players come into the market or want to partner with us. So we're partners with AWS, we're partners with Anthropic, we're partners with Google. We are, all of that, I think momentum also is helping grow the
Yeah,
ecosystem and
yeah.
making founders more
Yeah,
excited.
absolutely. Majed, from a global rights holders and investors and entertainment brands perspective, all of the people around the world looking at this market, what advice would you give them? Not just to, as you said, don't say enter, come to help, but what advice would you give them to do that well or successfully? Because we have seen sort of, businesses that have entered the market just generally that do very well, and others who aren't quite able to find their footing. So, how would you advise them to do this well and successfully?
Sure. So I think in the context of rights holders or investors coming in to look at the market, like I said, I think the market is at a stage, at an early stage, which makes it very exciting because we're still building, right? At the same time, when you look at rights and you look at rights here in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of benefits of coming in and looking at the market here in Saudi Arabia, especially when it comes to rights and acquiring of rights. With rights specifically, I think there are several layered advantages for an investor to come in, right? Aside from having rights that could potentially be bundled, whether it's in sports or entertainment, you are entering in a very specific and strategic phase in this evolution of our ecosystem where, investors who come in and are making a commitment to be a part of this journey from this early stage and acquiring rights that hold a specific value, you're creating by default benefits for yourself. You're opening doors for yourself within the kingdom. If you come in as an investor in a property or an asset that you may not even be in the industry, for instance, a football club, right? There's a lot of advantages in that. There's a capital appreciation play, first of all, in that where you come in, you buy a football club, you do a few fundamental things to increase the value of the club, where, you could, engage the fans in a unique way, tell a story in a different way, improve their sporting status and move them up the table, do things to improve the value of the club so that on the second round of investment, you can sell at a higher valuation or maybe even sell the club at a higher valuation. That's one way to really benefit and make money. But you're not buying a football club is not a commercially viable operation in general. When you talk about the bottom line and trying to be profitable in general over the long term, it's extremely difficult to do. And there's only exceptional cases of football clubs that are able to do that. But like I said, if you come in, thinking of it as a capital appreciation play, there's a way to do that. If you come in with data analytics, looking to buy and sell players at a profit, that's another way to make money. And the third is the optics of it all, right? The optics of it all, you come in and you come into an ecosystem at a very exciting stage and it opens so many doors for you. So
especially if you win.
Especially if you win, absolutely. But owning football. So I think in many ways the same concept will apply to so many different sectors and so many different rights, right? So I think when you think of that, and I think it's important to acknowledge that we are now evolving and moving where we are focusing on commercialization and financial sustainability to the point where we're not just looking at these benefits of opening doors or optics, where we are generally looking to add value to our assets. So investors are coming purely for ROI, purely for a return on their investment, a monetary return on investment. I think we're there and we're working towards there, and it's exciting to see how that journey evolves.
Well, we're going to see quite a few clubs come up for sale soon, aren't we? So
they have already been advertised as being for sale, and I think the privatization journey is an exciting one and one that they're prioritizing long.
well, it's the ultimate marketing opportunity as well, again, for the next couple of years in the lead up.
Absolutely, absolutely is. It's exciting not just for marketing, but for all stakeholders within that footballing industry who want to be a part of that journey, whether that's in attracting or helping in the transaction or post, right? Post and really helping the club get on its foot and find its way through and navigate this new territory. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Well, I don't write those kinds of checks, but the last time I was in Riyadh, I got to go to a football game, just a local game, and it was so exciting. And I could, just as a business even, if I could, I would definitely buy a club because I can see, it's like you've got a 3-year-old and you've got a 70-year-old.
Which teams were you? Do you remember the names?
I went to watch Al-Hilal.
Al-Hilal.
Yeah,
okay.
it's a joyful experience. I
Just a
highly
small team.
recommend.
Just a little small team. Not the biggest, right? Yeah.
No, but I highly recommend going if
course.
you haven't gone to see a game locally.
Yes.
It is a joyful experience, even
Very
if you
fun.
don't really
Yeah.
understand football like me.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to understand before we wrap up, is there any sector or any area that you think is overhyped? Or maybe you've had too many pitches about, and you're sort of telling founders, don't come to me with another one of those.
I think this is a very difficult question for me to answer, honestly, because we really welcome a lot of different ideas and different types of companies. What usually it comes down to is the the market that there is for that product. So when someone comes to us just because they like a certain industry or a certain service without a really established market for it, then we can't really go for it. I
Right.
think with overhyped, there's a lot of different hype now, like you were saying, with Claude, with AI and things like that.
Right.
But personally, I don't think it's overhyped. I think it's appropriately hyped at the
Yeah.
moment. We're seeing a lot of interesting ways that companies are using AI with their different startups. I think in general, there's really what's AI is doing in general is just leveling the field. So we're seeing a lot of people enter now, a lot of companies that wouldn't never exist like
Yeah.
2 3 years
Yeah.
ago, making so much revenue
Yeah.
with a very simple approach. The key there is if they can actually scale. So do they have the right traits as a founder? Do they have the right expertise, the experience to really scale that company and be sustainable?
Yeah, I was hearing one of the panels earlier actually that the best AI innovations for their companies are actually coming now from not the tech teams who know how to code, but the business teams who don't know how to code but have been able to use all these tools. So I guess
Definitely.
it's similar for all fields, including gaming.
Yeah.
If it's my dream or I have a great idea, tech know-how is not a barrier anymore.
Definitely. Yeah.
And before we wrap up, I guess question to both of you, and it's not a trick question,
Okay.
but where is the smartest capital now going that people are not talking about yet? To both of you.
Good.
Good. I think it's for me, and I'm gonna sound very biased, but it's definitely gaming. I think gaming is being
No, I mean within
overlooked.
gaming, obviously, not just within gaming.
I
Is
think,
there
yeah,
something?
definitely. So I think mobile games specifically, we're seeing people move away from mobile games, focusing more on PC because they see the mobile game market as being oversaturated. But right now, because of the quickness of how you can develop a mobile game and test it out, you can actually start perfecting a game, launching it, and then producing another one fairly quickly. So I think mobile games, and also I think specifically building games or gamifying applications for institutions
Right.
is really, really a huge
Right.
thing that we're seeing right now in the sector,
Yeah.
specifically in Saudi.
Yeah, like we've seen the success story of Wordle, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought a newspaper will buy a game and that'll become their most
That's true.
visited or most successful product in a way? Majed, what do you think is an area that money is going to that people are not yet talking about?
So first of all, I agree with Rima. I think gaming is, it's hard to deny that. I mean, gaming is an industry that was
So
massive.
I'm not just biased. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I think that industry in itself was massive as it is before we decided to create or build a hub around it here in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So with everything we've done over the past, what is it now, 8 years, I think,
Yeah.
approximately, there's no telling where the ceiling is for gaming, right? And Rima mentioned mobile games. I think with
I guess it will also only take that one first really big success story, kind of like what we saw
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Uber and Kareem.
Yeah,
We just need the one for the
for
rest
sure.
to kind of get on the map.
I also like what Rima said about hype. You know, I think we have appropriate hype, you know, because we're at a stage where, you know, things are building, things are growing, you know, people are learning. Even me, myself, with my company, you know, I've been operational now for almost 3 years, and I have a lot of intentionality in trying to learn as much as possible about the market. And if that means me doing a lot of different things, then so be it. You know, I have a lot of entrepreneur friends who come to me who say, Majed, you need to focus on one lane and really double down. And you know what? They're probably right, but I don't care, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm coming in with an attitude to really learn as much as possible and try to not just commercialize, but nurture the ecosystem. Um, maybe in a few years, I'll be able to answer your question a little bit better.
Right.
But
When we meet back here.
right now, honestly, I'm just enjoying the journey and really, you know, just trying to really figure out how best to add value into this ecosystem in a way that's meaningful.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of applause for our panel? Thank you so much
Thank
for that
you.
great chat.
Thank you so much.